Cool. Looks like we are live. Thank you. All right. Well, let's take a quick peek here. How can we tell how many? Oh, there's lots of people here. All right. Well, we might as well start. I know there was just a break, which was really cool. Incredibly happy that Financial Sense has put this on. What a cool way of spending 2 days learning so much from so many different speakers. And this session is a little it's almost like a newsreel of what happened over the last couple months with AI and automation inside of the accounting space. So some of it will go by super fast, some of it's pretty interesting and is worth a little bit more of a discussion. But if there's something that piques your interest and you're curious about it, feel free to ask questions throughout. I'm going to kind of keep my eye on the Q&A throughout. I feel like if you have that question, sometimes other people have the exact same question. And even though we only have like 50 minutes today, we will cover a whole bunch of stuff from all the major model makers like Microsoft and Anthropic and OpenAI and Google. We're going to look at some accounting specific AI tools that have been released and have had updates and really just have some commentary around what has occurred. So we have some really cool people in the background helping out with some of the admin. And if we could, let's do the first poll. Actually, I think I can put up the poll. Let me see, publish. Yes, we can. All right. The first question is: have you attended an AI update presentation from me in the past 2 months? I know I have uh, done similar situation or similar discussions at different conferences. And depending on how many yeses there are, that might change the trajectory of some of the things we talk about. So I'll let this go for just a few more seconds. And it does look like the majority have not, which is so good. So good. And for anybody who has said yes, welcome back. You kind of know what this is going to be about. And I'll start with the new stuff so that if you ever get to a point where you've seen something that has already been talked about, cool. You can check out other sessions too, or just kind of see how the conversation goes. That's fantastic. Okay. So about 85% haven't. So that means I should chat really quickly about who I am. Um, the most important thing is I think I have a firm, and the firm is based in Canada, but don't discount that just yet. We had gone from 0 people in 2012 to 120 people at its height in about 2022, and then back down to 60 people in an effort to try to find that level of a company that gives us and our customers the most amount of peace. And what a journey that has been. And throughout that, we've had to make a lot of discussions or have a lot of discussions about which tech to use, where do we put our efforts. And I think the thing that we learned the most, and if you take one thing away from the entire presentation today, this is it. AI and automation and like technology in general is not typically even in the top 5 things that really moves a firm forward. And for us, it was picking a better business model. It was changing our pricing strategies. Like we had moved completely off of value pricing onto more of a cost plus, and that worked way better for us. Value pricing with 120 people was really, really hard. We realized our clients needed to be profitable, every single one of them. So we needed to track time. All the things that a lot of people chat about that are sort of taboo in the industry. We've kind of gone through all of it, and whether it's you know comp structures, marketing, the client list, the pricing model, the business model, like those all came first. And tech has just been one of those things where if something is a big enough issue, then we went deep. So luckily, I guess I spent a lot of time learning about this stuff and playing around with it with the firm, and that is, I guess, why we're here today. Is I'm kind of just sharing some of the stuff that that I've kind of found. I also post daily annoying videos on LinkedIn in case any of us are connected. That has everything to do with all this stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. And we already have a first question. Incredible. Shannon, knowing that AI uses so many resources and data centers are devastating to the communities where they are located, how can you justify using AI? That is a tough question to start off with. And should we go there? Maybe. I think honestly that is a really good session to have on its own. I'm not trying to sideswipe it. I'm more so saying it deserves more space than what we've kind of allocated for this today. Good question, but I will push that off for now. Very political. Sorry about that. Okay, let's share my screen. Let's do the old "Can you see this" thing. Share a screen. Here we go. All right, we're gonna do a window. Awesome. All right. So what you see on the screen is a tool that I built using Lovable, which is a sort of vibe coding tool, app builder tool that uses natural language to be able to create an application. The reason I needed an application like this is because anytime I see something that I want to share with somebody or write down and remember, I can come through here, pick the company, put the update in. It saves to a database that's just here for me, and it now is in a presentable format. So we're going to go through everything that's happened in the last 42 days or so. So all of October and a little bit of November. It's about 64 updates. Some will be quick, some will be a little bit longer. All right. And again, I will keep coming back to the questions periodically. Awesome. All right. So the very first one is Anthropic. So OpenAI and Anthropic, two of the biggest model makers outside of Microsoft and Google when it comes to main models. Anthropic had a education pilot with Iceland that was just announced very, very like just a few days ago. And the main purpose of this was to preserve the Icelandic language. Now you're wondering, okay, this is an accounting and automation update. Why am I talking about this? And I think it comes back to the sense that we all want to give our teams access to as much information and access and education as we can. And this is just another example where if I know it's very sensitive onto Shannon's question about like what does the education system look like, but here's one where they really needed a way to have the Icelandic language be a foremost priority for them. So they went into this strategy session and figured out if they could give this to every teacher, then this would be an easier way to have the Icelandic language kind of preserved. Very interesting. One of those ones that can just be really, really quickly moved on from. Replit. Now, some accountants are using tools like Replit and Lovable and Bolt and Cursor, and even some from Microsoft and Google now to create tools like what you're seeing right on the screen. And they just released something in the last couple days that like it might even convince me to move some of my stuff from Lovable over to Replit. And it's this thing where you can now have AI features inside of the tool using the same amount of money and tokens that you purchased from Replit without needing to go back into those models and have your own accounts. So you can build your own chatbots and assistants, your transcription apps, customer insight dashboards, like things like that, document summarizers right in your tool without needing to kind of go out and learn how to connect to all these other things. So very, very cool little feature. And it just enhances anything that you need AI-ish inside of the tools. The next one's OpenAI. So they released a personality and custom instructions update where before, if you were to make changes to your custom instructions, it would only apply to all the new chats. And if you picked a personality, again, only new chats. However, now once you apply those, it'll extend to all the existing chats too. And this is probably a good place to start because we could go through all these updates, but I always found that if we start off by picking one simple AI thing to talk about, it's a tangible thing you can take away other than kind of reading some of these news pieces. So, what I thought we could do is for just maybe 2 minutes, go through this menu because a lot of people that use ChatGPT stick to this auto option. And when that happens, you typically don't get the best experience with OpenAI. You get fast results, you get things that don't necessarily reason very quickly or very long, and it sometimes defaults to the shortest answer, which typically isn't what you really want. So if it was me, I would probably never use this auto option, which is what happens when you like log in for the first time. Same thing with instant. Unless I really, really needed something that was relatively quick, I probably would never use this. Thinking mini, now this option occurs and is best used when you know you want it to think just a little bit, but not very long. We're talking like 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. You want it to like understand what you're saying and then go think about it for a minute. Again, I don't use that very often either. The majority of the time, I'm using this thing called thinking. And inside of thinking, normally accountants, we're using this for something where there's a cost of having incorrect information. And because of that, we've got a few different options under the thinking section. Now, for regular 20 and $30 a month plans for business accounts or regular accounts, you have standard and extended as the two main options. However, if you're on the $200 a month plan, you have light and heavy. So using standard and extended, you can figure out which one to use when. I'm probably using extended when anything is important, and then heavy anytime like I'm using it for something work related where I have to get it right. The next option is Pro. Now, Pro is only available if you're on the $200 a month plan or if you're on a business plan. And I think that's true. And what it does is it really goes deep and spends a lot of time. Now, to Shannon's point, it probably uses up a lot of resources to do that. But if there's a large cost of getting something wrong, like reviewing legal documents or incredibly hard financial models or analysis, you could use the pro option. You only get a number when you're on the business plan, and for pro you get a few hundred. So you can go through a lot there. Okay, that's that. I'm going to go back here just for a quick second and check out the questions. One moment. What's the easiest way to do this? Here we go. All right. Let's just pick a random one. Maria, how long until errors and emissions insurance catches on to use the risk of AI, read data privacy and audit accountants, bookkeepers, etc.? My insurance already has. We've already had to have discussions about AI use. I think we're using like Lloyd's of London or something like that as part of our cyber stuff. And yeah, it's full up and center and very much so talked about. So not sure about yours, and maybe there's terms and stuff already in there, but the majority of people I see going through this now are discussing the use of AI and how things are working and what you're putting in. Um, so I think it's here. Absolutely. Um, Jessica asks, any thoughts on how the teaching of accounting will change in schools with the addition of AI? Do you think certain fundamentals will still, of course, I think this is one of those things where you could spend a whole half an hour discussing and debating and no one will ever come out with the right answer. But um, I I love the schools that prohibit it and I love the schools that lean in on it. I think there's benefits to both, but you can't ignore it right now. And if you do, I mean, there's both pros and cons. So um, I just think we have to recognize that answers are instant now. And like to turn this into an accounting discussion, we're already seeing our customers come to us with a discussion they've already had with AI. And maybe it's just the way our customer base is, but like they expect us to use it. They know that they're using it and double checking our advice. And like that's incredible because now we can all get to the right answer and not try to like focus on who's smarter. Because in a world where there is unlimited use intelligence in quotation marks, it's about meeting people where they need us. And I think that's what we've learned is like we're no longer trying to be the only source of them being able to get help. And when we can both recognize that, I'll tell you, like, even in our sales pitches, I'm letting them know how we're using AI throughout the entire relationship, how our tools are using it. So they can get excited about a relationship that's embracing what's coming and not what's, you know, hiding, I guess you could say. So thanks for the question, Jessica. Um, Justine asks, what's a good way to start to build automations? How do you decide what automations to build in your firm? Oh, probably should get back to the news here, but that's a very good question. And I think the shortest way of approaching something like this is like to go right back to the beginning of the conversation, which is there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to get right in your firm first before you decide to invest time into automations or anything like AI. So once that becomes a priority, then you have to decide, am I going to buy it or am I going to build it? And honestly, most people want to buy it. So that whole function of buying something and having it be part of your toolkit, like I would rather people do that than get lost in the headaches of maintenance of what they have to build. But the reality is that people have to build certain things because the bridges of data and the tools we use just sometimes don't talk to each other, which is why like things like Financial Sense, when they have their API, makes it so much easier to bring in stuff on a customized level. And if we just kind of look at it through that lens, you now have at your fingertips, an educator, to Jessica's point, and you have unlimited information on how to get taught how to do this. So whether it's a peer group or it's yourself asking it to explain things like you're 6 and 10 and 20, uh, you have so much resources available to you to kind of walk through this. And there's like no substitute to digging in and understanding something through your lens because we all learn differently. And I've seen some of the smartest people in the accounting industry build things that have never built things in their entire lives because they're curious and they're asking the right questions, and like that's super super powerful. Okay, awesome. Let's go to this one now. All right. EY. So they released earlier this year this thing called AI Now. Now, it's kind of an interesting one because they're essentially letting all of their 400,000 global employees put in what they do for work, where they're at on their education journey, what their job is, what their issues are, and the AI will tell them how their job is going to be affected over the next few years. Incredibly transparent. Now, it's Big Four. We don't know all of the things that will be happening, but we know that they're putting hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into this kind of stuff. So it's just kind of interesting. Like this, they're one of the first ones to be able to say, no, 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 here's exactly how we're thinking about your job, but also here's what you can do to get ready for that future. Probably not a horrible discussion to have with your team, but I don't know if we have the clarity that they seem to have because things are moving so fast. For anybody using Microsoft, the agent mode in Word is out now, or it's part of their Frontier program. So it was launched at the end of October and it's rolling out in November for people in that program. Agent mode was in Excel, and we'll get to that in a minute, during October, and now it's moving to Word. So the issue that Excel had was that you had agents only on the online version of Excel, and it was only available for that one Excel file and it couldn't connect out into different systems or data sources. And it was just related to that. So a lot of issues that people were having, but at least it's coming. Thomson Reuters released some ready to review agents and workflows for 1040s and things like that. Um, Anthropic's Excel add in. Oh, this is so good. Um, we're so used to just having the the Excel and Microsoft combo being like, this is the only way that we can work with Excel. But when Anthropic dropped this a couple weeks ago, they essentially allowed for a sidebar. Let me just see if they have photos here. Yeah, it's right there. So this sidebar exists in Excel. And a couple months ago, Anthropic did some really big releases to be able to create and modify Excel files using Python. And now with this sidebar in it, you can essentially have like some of the most powerful AI models today as your co-person doing the work. So Anthropic's really good at creating Excel files, but it's even better when you have something and you ask it to edit it and update it. Um, it is already like even just a few weeks, people are getting really antsy in the sort of BI, like business intelligence kind of community, and like the people whose spreadsheets jobs are doing this all day long. It's hopefully going to multiply so they can just do better work. And if you haven't tried it and you do have a Claude account, it's worth trying out. I was really impressed with how good it was. Now, of course, some of it's slow and some of it doesn't look great, but you just get better at asking it what you want, and it can do some incredible analysis. Now, you would want to do that when you have a lot of computations and a lot of like dynamic data and things that like require spreadsheets. Some people will just export spreadsheets and throw them into like a chat gpt or a copilot or a claude and have it do the analysis. But having it done right in the sheet when it can see the sources and see how the data's like compiled, it just seems to be just a little bit better. Okay. Siri powered by Gemini. I threw that in there just because uh, my daughter uses Siri a lot and complains a lot. And now that it'll be done by Gemini, hopefully it'll be a little bit better. Buddy Jason put out a one-page guide a couple days ago that is incredibly useful, and might as well just throw that into the chat. Let's see if I can throw this here. There we go. So you can grab that and take a gander. It is super thorough. It is the result of a lot of work that Jason and his team put into doing a sort of review of everything that's happened in the industry. So I like where he puts contenders down here with things, who's watching, and laggards and things like that. So if you were ever curious, there you go. And there's good old financial sense in the leaderboard for practice management. Nice. Okay. Uh, I threw Wave in here because you never get Wave information updates, and there's very few Wave accountants. But they announced the Blue Vine partnership. Good for them. Get some Wave Pro 3 free months and 6 free months of Wave if you do this. So good for Blue Vine. Expensify, they've been kind of quiet lately. Kind of botched the concierge launch a few years ago, but relaunched their concierge AI agent to be very natural language commandy. So now it can autocorrect and fill out incomplete expense details, flag suspicious receipts, and do all that kind of stuff. So good on them. Hopefully, it is a little bit better than their last launch. OpenAI. Okay, company knowledge. This is a big one. And the reason this is big is because so many companies are asking, like, how can I take everything I have in my SharePoint or my Google Drive or my Dropbox or my Box, whatever it is, and let our team use it to be able to have access and be more efficient and get better answers. And the problem with every single thing that has been released over the last few years, whether it's ChatGPT connectors or MCP servers or um, uploading certain documents, like we've always run into this one big problem, which is memory. You only have so much of it. And to Shannon's point earlier, it's expensive to waste all of these tokens when you want the knowledge to be at your fingertips. So everybody's tackling this. And there's so many apps in our space that are trying to be centralized knowledge places as well. You have it with tax research tools, you have it with customer service, with things like Ping and things like that. Um, you have it all over the place. But with OpenAI, they just like, you know, we're like, cool. I think we've got another way of doing this better. So they released this thing called Company Knowledge, and it's for the business accounts, enterprise, and EDUs. So if you're on the $200 a month plan or you're on an individual plan, you won't have access to this. But it takes those connectors and it accesses them in a more efficient way. So, yes, it's just a newer tool, it's a new shiny thing, but it's more accurate and it's faster. So, if you are on a business plan and you are the administrator, you might want to turn this on for your users and give it a chance. And the reason why it's a little bit safer is because it does respect the security protocols that you have inside of your SharePoint or inside of your Google Drive. So if someone asks a question about HR salaries or salaries from an HR folder, if they don't have access to that data, they're not going to be able to get an answer. So that's really good. Something you should test too if you don't try it, if you don't trust it. But I did. I created a really simple user and went in and asked it some things, and it didn't have access. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So company knowledge, very very good feature, and it's only under 4 weeks old. Sage X3 is making some foundational changes. It got its Sage Copilot and Sage's AI agents around this. They launched two things: Sales Insights and Copilot Chat inside of X3. Um, I don't have any Sage X3 clients, but I know some bigger accountants do, and just to see that is kind of nice. Sage is doing a lot of work. They got a lot of flack back in the early part of the year where they cross contaminated client information. Not good. But they've since kind of pulled their socks up and are releasing a lot more agents inside of their tools. Intuit released this consumer platform. If you haven't seen this is kind of interesting. Um, a whole bunch of stuff with who did they say it was? Credit Karma TurboTax. So November 6th, this is only 6 days old. It essentially, under the consumer platform, does this thing called Credit Spark, so a credit builder. It helps them find the right cards. I wonder how independent that is. A debt assistant, I'm not sure. That's coming soon. But this is the interesting one, tax assistant, right? It transforms the tax filing into simple steps. They get answers for their questions. I mean, this is nothing new. TurboTax has had AI stuff in the past, lots of wrong answers. Again, they are making claims that this is going to be super helpful. Automated tax filing guarantees the best value and biggest refund, whatever that means. Like they're going after it. So if you haven't seen that, that is 6 days old. Make customized run name and scenario run replay. If you are a make.com user, which is like a Zapier alternative and something you can use to build automations, um, in the past, it was really hard to I'll just throw it through on screen so you can see. It was really hard to identify all of the runs. Just it was easier in Zapier, but here you can make custom names. So adding a customer ID or adding a date or doing whatever. That's super neat. And then Zapier's had this for years, but you can now replay a run in Make, which you haven't been able to do in Zapier. So really cool little automation update, something that people have been asking for a long time. Just gonna do a quick check of the questions and go from there. All right. Uh, Rochelle or Rachel, sorry, asks, do you need a paid version for Claude to work with spreadsheets? Regardless what the answer is of that, I would get a paid one so that you can ensure that your account and your usage is not there for the training of the masses. Um, I feel like it feels like a given these days with tools. Like if it's free, you're the product. So if there's anything you can do and it's free trial or it's, 20 bucks here to give it a try, it's probably worth it. Um, Miriam asks, how do you turn company knowledge on in ChatGPT? Again, that's done through the business side. You know what? We could probably go right here. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. I just want to see if they had any screenshots. They do not. Sorry, but it is on here, and once it's turned on as an admin, it becomes an option, just like it does with connectors and agent mode and all that other kind of stuff. So if you're a user and you don't see it, your admin will have to go turn it on. Okay. We've got Faith. Who do you have as a leader and innovator for Canadian tax prep? Uh, Loaded question, Faith. I think we use iFirm because it's online and it has an API. So it has the most capabilities for us to be able to import and do things from an automated basis. And a lot of the big four use that as well because of it. Um, could say other things about other things, but I feel like just like in the US, there's not a ton of options for like truly online API friendly things. And there's a bunch coming down the pipe. When they do and they're integrated well, we're going to see a mass, uprising of people that actually switch to these things because there is so much automation potential. Um, okay, we're good there. Let's go back to the rest. Okay, cool. And we've got 15 minutes, so let's do this. OpenAI released a free model for people to have guardrails and safety. So they are trying to, contribute to the overall well-being of the world, no matter what you think. I question it just like everybody else does, but they released this model so that you can, have this run alongside of your data, so there's nothing malicious happening. File search and API. A lot of this stuff I'm going to skip over. Tax Figure got launched. So this is Liz Mason's tool out of High Rock in Arizona. So it's kind of free up until next year. And again, tax research tool by an accountant for accountants. And if you want to sign up for the beta and kind of work through some of that, it is there. The website is taxfigure.com, not sponsored, just cool that another accountant's building tools. Ledger Docs, rapid bookkeeping tool. This is a trend, and it's not that I like endorse Ledger Docs or something. I don't, but the idea is that I wonder if they have it here. Yeah, even just the website has a lot of words that don't mean a lot. Um, but if we go back to this, the idea is that you can bring in all the all the transactions and it'll auto classify, do all the pre-work, and like maybe not even need QuickBooks or Zero or something else. It just does it all. So it's interesting that this exists now in this period of like the big guys, the big apps not being able to deliver, and like the small tools having the nimbleness to work a little bit better. It kind of reminds me of how scrappy Zero was versus QuickBooks 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I don't know how long this will last, but you have things like Digits and Count and all these other ones that are doing really good work, but people still use QuickBooks, right? So even though they can be pushed into QuickBooks like Ledger Docs does. I mean, there's going to be this world where we're going to eventually figure out what tools work best for us. Speaking of Count, they had a whole bunch of new options for APIs and pulling bank statements from 25 main banks and document reading so that you can either push it to QBO or not. If you haven't seen Count, Count is essentially a tool that it's connected to Plaid and whatever, and all the bank accounts. They'll look at your emails and their documents and match up transactions and reconcile them just outside of QuickBooks. And I think they're competing with QuickBooks, but they also have a push to QBO if you absolutely have to. Artifact. So this is an interesting one. Artifact it's a very simple website, but the idea is that you have a whole bunch of information and they want to take it all in, but they want to give you this thing called Artie, or is it Omni? Let me see. Omni. And they'll let you create your own AI workflows inside of their tool with all of the data that's connected. So it's similar to what OpenAI is doing with Agent Kit, where you can bring in all your company knowledge and then use agents to do stuff. But it's the OpenAI one's super techy and only like super nerds are using that right now. But with Artifact, it's like accessible. And it kind of reminds me of what Copilot's trying to do with Microsoft with Copilot Studio, making, agents accessible to everybody by just dragging and dropping a few things to, help with a repeatable process. So again, these middleware things, there's going to be a lot of them pop up. Which ones stick and which ones don't, it's hard to say, but this one's about 1 to 2 grand for a 20-person firm. Ping, another sort of meeting assistant, consolidated document, CRM kind of thing, auto drafts emails now. So like you get an email in, it takes all the context from your thing and it kind of works. If you ever use a system called Fixer, it's kind of like that. Abacor launched. They're like another kind of like a vinyl for meeting recorders for accountants. And again, it's really hard to distinguish which one you should use. And for me, I guess there's no like horse in this race or anything, but it is nice that there's accounting specific ones because that's helpful. However, like ChatGPT is also sitting on this thing called ChatGPT Record, and it's free as part of it. And like Teams has a recorder, and Google Meet has a recorder, and like when does meeting transcripts and the saving of those just become part of the main tools that we use as part of the company knowledge and as part of the AI itself? So while it's nice and I think it'll be helpful, there might be a disconnect between how long that will be a benefit versus when the tools actually offer something that does it for free that you're already paying for. Spotlight Reporting did some AI generated ESG reporting stuff, which is kind of neat. Another tax research tool, Bezora. The couple of these aren't really big news, so we'll just kind of skip it. Fishbowl, I mean, this is kind of cool. AI inventory. They released this thing called Juno. So what has to ship? It looks at bills and materials, and it looks at POs and lead times, and helps you actually operate your inventory management versus having to use 3 or 4 different tools. So good on them for using AI for the hard stuff. I think is a really good example of applying that. Socket, if you haven't heard of Socket, they're based out of the UK and they're an Ignition and Anchor competitor. So they'll do proposals. But one of the cool things they did was they released a bunch of Zapier triggers. So if you come over here, when a proposal, I think there's like a ton of them. You can do that. So very cool of them to build that. LinkedIn, if you haven't done this yet, please do it. November 3rd was the deadline, so it was 9 days ago. But up until November 3rd, if you turned it off, all of your data would not be used as part of the model training for LinkedIn AI that's coming. If you haven't turned it off, then you need to do that if you don't want it to be there. It's under this data privacy section. And if you just go to your settings, hit data privacy, data for generative AI improvement, make sure that that's turned off. If you missed that deadline, I'm sorry. But I did do a video on it on LinkedIn. Uh, let's see. Just going to skip over some of this stuff. Oh, this is an interesting one. Big rumor right now that there's going to be ads inside of ChatGPT. And if you like the idea of memory and personalization, there will be ads. And if you turn off memory and personalization, they think there won't be. But it's like a budget. It's not true until it's written in. So we don't know if that's true or not. Also, Teams is going to start reporting your work location. They call it snitching, based off of your IP address. So if you're working from different places and you don't have a VPN somewhere, there will be reports and things to the admins of your teams, people that do this. They gave us a couple months notice. I think it goes live in December. Um, oh yeah, this is another big one. So if you're worried about like privacy, the New York Times lawsuit came out with a ruling that said that any chats that you have, like as an individual person, they are subject to discovery if they were prior to October 23rd. Anything after October 23rd is apparently protected. So that was in the news. Copilot Vision from Microsoft lets you talk to your computer and use Copilot, which is kind of nice. And I'm trying to find some fun stuff. This is a neat one. State of AI. We are in our bubble of finance, right? Our finance and bookkeeping and taxes. But like there's a whole bigger world that's benefiting from some of this. And in this kind of state of AI link, you can get a quick overview, but you can also have the 300 thing slide. But it's essentially saying like the scientific benefits, the finding of proteins, the curing of some cancers, the improvements to therapeutics, whatever it is, like they're getting a ton more benefits than accounting and finance, rightly so. And it's just a reminder that there's like a bigger world out there that is benefiting from some of this stuff. Um, the Atlas browser, I guess the only thing I can say about that is Jason Stats put out a really good video about this. He's as cautious as I am about it. I get the heebie-jeebies knowing that ChatGPT knows everything about me from the memory function, but it also can act autonomously. And I don't want to babysit this thing just yet. So I know there's a whole bunch of people that are very, very pro Atlas right now. I just think it's too early to get so excited about something that could be so malicious and hurtful. So I don't have it turned on. I tried it with a burner account once, but when I watched it just go by itself, I sort of weird, but I didn't feel the greatest. I'm gonna just want to see if there's anything major here. Oh, apps. Yeah. Canva, Coursera, Figma, Expedia, Spotify, Zillow, like this inside of ChatGPT. The reason I brought this up is because these are official partnerships and apps. Um, there's it's not a far fetch, for you to call Financial Sense inside of this, or call QuickBooks, or call Zero, and just start chatting. So that's the reason I included it, because the infrastructure is there right now. And what else? We only have a few more minutes. So you can have Slack and ChatGPT, and ChatGPT and Slack. That was released just a few weeks ago. Oh, let's end on this one and then go to questions. Agent skills. What's really cool about what Anthropic does is like they're at the forefront of everything. They created MCP, which is this way for you to interact with APIs using natural language. But they also created these things called agent skills because they're trying to address that problem we talked about earlier, which is memory. So now anytime you say something like, hey, I need to do a discounted cash flow, or I need to analyze the bookkeeping transactions for X or Y or whatever it is you're really good at in your firm, you can create a skill in its own file that is then called upon. And then it knows everything about how to do this thing without needing to go through your entire company knowledge to try to find it. And that helps solve the memory issue, and it gets you way better results. And again, these are used in that Excel for Claude add-in, which makes it cool. So if you want to read up about it, there's a blog post about all the skills and how to use them and why they exist. But that's probably one of the biggest fundamental changes to agents and how to fix the memory problems so that you actually get better results. All right, let's go for a couple questions. All right. Actually, there aren't too many. Marnie says, my knee jerk reaction is that's so intrusive. Yeah, if you're talking about ChatGPT Atlas, I totally get it. Um, if there are questions, either throw them in the chat or the Q&A. We'll go from there. Oh, is there another question? I think Faith. Oh, okay. Let's read this. So, in using open APIs, are you helping companies build AI agents? They are using your data to help improve their models libraries. Not necessarily. There are settings that you can turn off and are turned off by default on the business plans that don't allow them to do that. Again, if you're on the free plan, you are the product. If you're on a paid plan that's not part of a business plan, then there's a chance that you didn't turn that setting off. So the best thing you can do, and I'll just throw this up really quickly, is to go into your settings and go to data controls. See where it says improve the model for everybody? You can turn that off. Oh, and if you're super nerdy, you can go to personalization and there's a whole bunch of personalities that you can make ChatGPT take. And I've tried them all for multiple days at a time for each one. And I love nerdy. It is, if you're I think a lot of accountants might like it too because it goes deep. So you could ask it a question, it will give you back a simple answer sometimes, but when you have it on nerdy, it just goes 2 levels deeper. So you get like a full you get a full report or a full result. And it isn't afraid to go technical. So you can try any one of these, but if you're always constantly asking for more, you might want to go into nerdy there. All right. We have 1 minute left. Oh, and Faith, you asked about not understanding how models are improving with quality data. Models get what are called fine-tuned or retrained all the time, and that's what they're doing. They're just getting retrained and retrained from people that are allowing them to use their data. David asks, what's the state of digits puzzle and zero QBO? I demoed them to and what they claim is not what they delivered. Like anything, it just takes a random Tuesday for that to be something that is okay. I'm with you. A lot of these things are not where they could be, but like just a few weeks ago, these agent skills were put out. Just a month ago, Ramp used Agent Kit from OpenAI. And like the things that are happening 45 days ago, they're like tripled in quality. And I know I'm going to end right now, but the speed of AI is doubling every 7 months, which is insane, way faster than any other law that we've ever seen in computing. So keep an open mind. Thank you, everyone.